Alright, here we go. Turn this fan off so you can hear.
You are the only participant in the conference.
I'm waiting for him to come on. Can you hear? Somebody tell me you can hear this. Hear me. Pretty well. Hey,
Hi, Brennan.
what's up?
How are you?
Well, I'm pretty good. I mean, all things considered.
Yeah.
Yesterday I went to see Dr. Gandhi because, well, I went to see her a couple of days ago because, I've had this swollen toe. My right toe has been swollen for like 2 months, and I kind of I didn't want to make a big deal about it. But it had been persisting, so I decided to talk to her about it, and so,
Right.
she gave me some antibiotics to rule out like an infection or something, and I also got a uric acid test. She's like, "Have you ever had gout?" I'm like, "Please don't ask me that question. I don't need another thing on top of another thing, you know." So she did that. I got the.
That's what she thought it was, right? You thought it was maybe gout? That's what you talked about?
Well, no, she just. I mean, she didn't do an actual test. I mean, she took blood, but she didn't stick it in my joint with a needle or anything. So, I get the test results came back and they're in the normal range, but a lot of people that I've talked to about it said that it can be in the normal range, and the only real way to tell if you have gout is for them to actually take a needle and stick it in your joint. So I'm not too excited about that if it happens, because I also got an X-ray. So I guess we'll just see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
What can you do preventatively or like proactively to kind of reduce the inflammation that may occur from gout flare-ups?
well, I mean, I don't know that it's gout yet.
That's true.
But I mean, in general, I don't really have a diet that is conducive to a gout flare up.
What is the diet that's conducive to a gout flare-up? Do you know?
Uh, like rich meats and like certain fish, sugar, and to be honest, I drink a lot of sugar, like sugary sodas and stuff. But I also like when I'm at work, I also just drink water or club soda. So I'll maybe have like, huh?
Maybe cut back on the sugar.
Yeah, maybe. Um, I'll just drink my coffee black, like I normally do during the summer with ice. Uh, so other than that, everything's fine. Yesterday, um, because I had to go to see Dr. Gandhi, she called me in and she's like, "Can you come at 2 o'clock?" I was like, because I had to work at 2:30, and I was like, okay. So I just told them I'd be late. Um, but then she had me go down and get an X-ray, and I just texted them and said I'll be a little more late. It looks like I'm gonna be here a little while, but I made it there by like 5:20 or something, and and that's during the time that it's still like dead. They had maybe 3 tables out. and but there were 3 servers, and my boss's twin sons. They were like, "We thought you were just coming to have dinner. You were supposed to work." I was like, "Yeah, nobody told you that." And they're like, "You can go home if you want." And I'm like, "Well, that's up to you guys." But then the bartender slash the guy running the show for the night, because we don't really have a manager hanging around these days, except for like on Friday, Saturdays. But he's like, well, Francois said that when you come, you need to stay. But then the twins are like, no. And they're like, we're gonna call him. I'm like, don't. I said, don't tell him I asked, because I don't want anybody to be pissed off at me. I don't need that. I'll stay if I need to stay. You know? So, but they called him and they're like, go home. So I went home and I had a nice day, just kind of chilling by myself. Brett, I asked him to come with me yesterday to the doctor, because sometimes I have a hard time like expressing myself or advocating for myself, or I forget to bring things up that I do or happens. And he came, but he came and he was like, I'm not going back there with you. And I was like, well, that's the whole reason I brought you. He's like, but you know, he has a tendency to pop off on people, like if they're not listening, and get really rude. Like he did that to the nursing staff one time when I had to get my tooth removed because it was infected. So, but he came in, he sat there, and he was quiet. He did say a couple of times like some things like rude, but I was like, chill. I'm like, I keep trying to explain to him that I'm lucky to have insurance right now. Like, millions of Americans don't even have insurance. You know.
What did he say that you felt like was rude?
He tells her that she's not doing her job, and I'm like, what did you expect her to do? Wave a wand and have my foot better? Like, what do you want? Like, she gave me medication. She sent me for an X-ray. Those are the first steps. Like, those are the things that are indicated. Like, the system in America is set up so that, you know, we spend as little money as possible. Things that are indicated, we do, you know. And so, you know, I got my X-ray, and if nothing shows up on the X-ray, if nothing, you know, and I got my test results back from the uric acid test, and you know, like I said, they're it's normal. So if I don't have like a fracture or something, because my toe is swollen and red, if I don't have a fracture, then probably she'll send me to a podiatrist or something to, you know, have.
So where is he getting evidence that she's not doing her job? I don't understand. Where is that even coming from?
I don't know. I think he has high expectations for medical practitioners in the USA. I'm like, what? I'm like, no. Like,
Well, I don't think that she's not doing her job. I think his expectations are not even reality based.
Exactly.
That's what she's supposed to do.
it's exactly. And that's what I tried to tell him. And then after, he walked me down to work because the hospital's near my job. And he left. I walked in, he left, and he went to go hang out with his friend Ariana, which is good because he doesn't get to see his friends very often. Not because of me. I think he feels guilty because he doesn't like to let me go see my friends as much, and so he doesn't. But I never told him he couldn't. So, so he went.
That's not good.
No.
He doesn't let you.
No, exactly. I
You're
don't.
not a child.
Exactly. I do anyway. I'm like, I'm gonna go hang out with Doug. Bye, and he went and hung out with Ariana, and they talked, and then he got some perspective from her. Because he trusts her, and before he came home, even he was apologizing. He was like, "I'm so sorry, I was being such a bitch earlier." He's like, Ariana talked to me, so everything was fine. But the real accomplishment, I think, on my end is not insisting that he come spend the day with me because I got off work. Because usually we have the same days off work, and that's how it's been for like a year, and we usually spend those days together. But each of us had a day kind of on our own, and he came home happy, and I was happy because I got to. I met this guy on my Facebook that is really cool, and he's writing books and things, and he's reading my writing and kind of giving me notes, and so that's fun for me.
Oh, that's cool. Brad.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really fun for me, and he's like 80 years old, so like Brad like isn't worried about that, and he lives in Lubbock.
It doesn't feel threatened.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't threaten.
And I like him.
How has your communication been, Brad? Like, have you guys been communicating okay?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Good.
This week, yeah. And I told him, last time we had a fight, I told him the best way you can help me is to tell me then when I'm sounding condescending or mean.
Right.
And he did. Like when
Exactly right.
I did cry because he was like getting mad about, I don't know, because he was mad because I was working on the days that we usually spend together, but I was like, I can't help that because the boss, the owner, fired his son for being drunk on the job and blah blah blah, and so he put in I think he was more like forced into putting it in his 2 weeks notice, and so they have him on the weekends to where it's busy enough to where he'll focus. It's easy to get distracted when it's slow. That's why when it's slow, the service is shittier in general, and that goes for any restaurant.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain this to him, and he's like, and he's like worrying about my foot and like all my other ailments, like my neck and I'm tired when I come home, but I'm not necessarily sad about that. I'm losing weight, which makes me happy. But he made me feel like garbage about it. I was like, what do you want me to do? Like, you're not giving me money, you're not paying for things for us, like, I need to work. I don't mind working, you just need to chill out about that.
When you said that?
I didn't say anything about him. I didn't say, you're not working, you're not contributing. I didn't say that, but that went through my mind. I did say, I need to support us. That's what I said.
Right.
And he understands that, but he thinks that I care more about money than him or about us. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. It's like, I'm just trying to prevent us from having a really bad situation if Hasa doesn't come through for me.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't think he understands that my case got closed and what that means. And I tried to explain it to him, and I don't.
Did you explain it to him?
I tried to,
Right.
but when he's arguing with me, he's not in the mood to listen. He's like wanting to get his point across, and he thinks that I'm wanting to get my point across. So I just stopped talking. I stopped engaging with his anger, and then eventually it calms down. I think that's like the key is like I try not to say things that are incendiary while we were having our spats. Like if he says something hurtful, I just don't say anything back. Because if I say
Also has to know the impact of his words and behaviors and his tone of voice when he talks to you, because it's not a one-way street. I think too. It can't just be like this conversation, or that's you're being critical and it doesn't feel good, and
Yeah,
maybe you need to go take a walk before we finish the conversation.
right. Well, I just, turned around, pulled my chair up to the window, and just started smoking. And I was crying because I felt so, like, stuck between a rock and a hard place because I have to work, but he doesn't want me to be working as much as I do. And I'm already working less than I was before the pandemic. Because my boss, I told him,
But what is that rooted in? He doesn't want you to be working. I mean, it's like it's.
he's worried about my health. That's what it is. He
He's
thinks
afraid you're gonna get COVID, or because he's afraid you're gonna get sick because of something else.
both. Both. It's hard on my body. I'm getting old.
You're not getting. Oh my God, you are not getting old. What fantasy?
That's what I said. That's what I said. But that's what he that's what he thinks. 29.
No, you are not getting old. That is crazy talk.
Tell me about it. I was like, I'm fine. I'm like, this toe is not a product of my job. This toe thing.
Brandon, this is about him. How do I say this diplomatically? This is about his projection of his own insecurities and his own fears, and you can't take that on as how you're gonna move and live and breathe in the world. Like that's not healthy for a relationship dynamic. You guys don't want to become codependent, where like you feel like you have to act and live and breathe and move through the world in your life the way he demands, because that's just controlling and manipulative.
Of course.
That's not healthy. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for him.
And I'm not doing everything he says. I do what I want to do. And he does what he wants to do. And he did ask me when I left the restaurant. I texted him after I left the restaurant, or he was already getting on the train, so he couldn't hear me. I tried to call him. And he's like, what do you want me to do? I'm on my way to see Ariana. I was like, go see Ariana. It's fine. Really. I'm just going to go home and have a day to myself. Everything is fine. And it was. And we had no spat. We had no issues. And that's growth. So.
That is growth, and you guys need to be able to have that. Like that's what balance in a relationship is. You ideally want to have interdependence, right? Where you recognize and acknowledge that you do impact each other, your moods, your feelings, your emotional states, your way of communicating, all those things. You impact each other, but you don't want to be codependent, where like you start to change your behavior based on what the other person demands of you, because then you're going to feel resentful, or he's going to feel resentful, and that creates its own set of problems.
Well, okay,
As you know.
but that's contrary to what we talked about last time, because remember we talked about he needs to be more considerate of coming home late, like that expectation, or I need to be more lax. Like both of those options are.
It's not contrary to what we talked about at all. It's not at all contrary to what we talked about. How do you figure it's contrary to what we talked about?
Because both of those things involve adjusting how I would normally react because of him, or he would adjust the way he normally acts because of me.
No, that's called having integrity and being a man of your word. That's him choosing to be a man of his word or not. That has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with him. So you're encouraging him to, if he's going to be late, to let you know so that you don't feel worried about him.
Right.
That's not inherently trying to be controlling. That's just you have an expectation of someone is going to follow through and do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
That's something different. That's not the same as saying you're going to become codependent and you're going to control the other person's behavior with manipulation and emotional blackmail.
Right.
So,
Do you know that? I forgot what I was gonna say.
it's okay. Take your time.
He, I don't know. I feel like yesterday was a really good day for us.
Well, what you said is true. It is growth. If you guys can allow each other space just even by yourself to have a day and do what you need to do. That's a healthy dynamic in a relationship.
Yeah, and when before COVID, that's exactly what we were doing. I made my schedule at work to have one day off by myself and one day with him, and that was great. It was perfect. But he doesn't understand like the dynamic of the small restaurant and how one person can change so many things. He doesn't understand why I allowed them to make me work 6 days in a row. He's like, you can't do that. Your body you can't do that. I'm like, I can do that, and I am doing that. I've done it many years, Sure,
That's where you need to. That's where you need to set boundaries, and that's why I want you to work on the DBT skills, because that's going to help you set boundaries with him, and to help you have a clear path to do that, so that you can set boundaries in a way that doesn't lead to a big blowout.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's part of what it is. It's like, how do you regulate your own emotions when you're feeling like you want to blow up at him because he's trying to do something that feels imposing or telling you what you can and can't do, because that's naturally going to trigger the wounded boy in you, right? Because the wounded boy in you is going to rebel against that. The wounded child in us is going to say, don't tell me what to do. I'm a grown man.
No, but that's not what
Tell me, like,
That's not how I reacted, though. I just said, I don't know what you want me to do. I said, what do you want me to do?
it's not about what he wants you to do. It's about you asserting what you feel you need to do for you.
Okay. But, that's what I do. But he just gets angry about it. About the fact that we don't get to be together this week, and the fact that I'm working so much. He only works 4 days a week. He's like, I only do that because I can't. My back is so messed up. And it's true, he has scoliosis or whatever, and he doesn't have a doctor. Oh, but we did get some good news this week. I want to change the subject to talk about this, actually, because this is bigger. I talked to the immigration lawyer, and he said, well, because apparently I've been wrong this whole time. Yes, Trump did extend or stop green cards until the end of the year, but that does not apply, apparently, to spouse naturalization. So that's the one thing. And secondly, apparently a court nixed the public charge requirement. And that means that I don't have to prove that I can support him. And that means that we don't need his boss to sign off. And so we can really get this done this month, probably. So that was big news. So
It is big, but I think let's go back to what we're talking about for just 1 second, and then we can move off of it. You guys are laying a foundation for your relationship and how you communicate and how you have conflict and how you work through that conflict.
mm-hmm.
So I think part of the reason that I want you to try to do the DBT stuff is because ideally you're able to move through conflict in a way that you're both mutually respectful of each other and of yourselves, right? And the ability to say, like, my spouse is this is my lover, my best friend, my companion, and I can't expect him to live in a way that I demand, or because he's his own being. You're each your own man, and you're your own person. And you're going to live and breathe and move through the world the way that you're used to doing it. Does that mean you can't compromise and you can't negotiate boundaries? No, of course you can. But you don't want to get into the pattern, the behavioral pattern in your relationship of you saying, okay, well, what do you want me to do? Because then I'm going to do it. Because then what happens is when you do that, then guess what happens? Then subconsciously, on some level, typically what people will do is then they'll expect their partner to do the same thing, right? Meaning that I can tell you what to do, and then if you don't do it, meanwhile I'm over here doing what you tell me to do, but you're not doing what I tell you to do,
Yeah.
then it creates big drama, big fights, big
Yeah.
blowouts.
I agree.
So
I've already had those big fights with him about those exact reasons. So, and I'm learning. You know, I'm learning and practicing coping skills.
good.
You know, and even going back to work, like I had to at some point before we stopped and going to work, I had
Yes.
started implementing some coping skills that were really effective. Like, and it's actually goes. This is a coping skill that goes back many years that I just stopped using for one reason or another. But I'll like
Okay.
I'll go to the restroom and just sit there
Yeah.
and just not hear anybody.
Just take a break.
Yeah.
Just take a moment to be away.
And so that really helps.
Yeah. Anything that can help you get out of your head in that moment and like a healthy distraction, right? So you can just like come back, ground yourself in your body, take some deep breaths in and out, you know, just kind of self-soothe in that moment. There's lots of ways to do it. It's just finding the way that works well for you.
Yeah. And
You
I'm
know, and like go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I'm finding that I'm getting better with clients or with guests at the restaurant. You know, I used to have a problem with like feeling my feelings at them, but but really, you know, it's come to a minimum. I did have a couple of issues this week, but nothing crazy.
Right.
Like there was this guy that was like, this coq au vin was terrible, and I've been coming here for years. And I was like, would you like something else? And he said something like, oh no, you know how Upper West Siders are. Surely you know that. They're like, I know the owner, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. He's like, it's the one that speaks French, right? And I'm like, sir, there's a lot of people here who speak French. This is a French restaurant. And his guest laughed at him, and then I think he actually gained a little respect for me for having said that. And so he started laughing and everything got better. So I'm learning to I'm kind of learning that I am allowed to not be a robot, and I'm allowed to have a conversation with people.
Right.
You know, because for my whole serving career, it's been me following the rules. But when you allow yourself to have a real conversation with the people, then it makes your night a lot easier. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's okay to just, like you're saying, to be authentically yourself. And you know it's also reading the room and reading your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing when to push and when to pull back. Knowing when you can make a little bit of a funny, snarky comment and when it's not going to be received well. You have to read the dynamic, read the energy.
Yeah.
You have to not just say the first thing that comes to your mind impulsively, but you have to kind of like, it's a nuanced interaction, right? Like some people, if you had said that, you would have just escalated the conflict because they would have gotten upset with you, right?
Yeah.
But this guy was able to tolerate it and not take it personally and not go off and not get more upset and have a moment.
That was a risk, though. That one was a risk because it was a table of a couple of good old boys, you know, older good old boys, and normally I get really uncomfortable waiting on those kind of guys, but I guess there's a point at which I guess I've stopped caring so much what they're gonna say about me.
That's so good. Yes, that's healthy. That is the first step, Brendan. What other people say about me and what they think about me is none of my business.
Exactly.
Right? You don't need to care about that stuff. It's not going to matter. Are they paying your bills?
Kinda.
Are they going to bed with you at night? Well, not really. They're not really paying your bills. I mean, that person is not paying your bills.
I mean, they're giving me tip. Okay. Oh, but you know, shit, I was gonna say this. I damn, I hate when I have things to say and I forget.
It'll come back. Don't worry, it'll come back. I mean, what I'm saying is, he is part of your livelihood. This guest, right? This customer that you have.
Yes.
However, when I say what other people think about me, when they say about me is none of my business. You want to be able to move and live in the world being authentically yourself, because then you will be able to deal with stress like that and not get so upset about it.
Right. Well, that's okay. This is what I was gonna say. That goes back to the paranoia about people and the way they think of me is so deeply seated because of how I was treated in Texas for having HIV. Because everybody in Texas knew I had HIV, and I couldn't escape it. And so I got to a point where I thought everybody was talking about me all the time. Because they were. They legitimately were at that time. And so I moved to New. It's like 50% of the reason I moved to New York is to get to create a new me and to get away from that. And I was just talking to my friend Jocelyn about this yesterday, and she said, I'm really proud of you. You're. She's like, you'll probably never get rid of that. And I said, yeah, but through therapy, I'm gaining perspective on how to live with it. And so that's.
But I think it's also like you're healing that wound of feeling like your HIV status makes you in some way less than, because it doesn't. It would be like saying someone that has cancer feels less than about him or herself because they have this illness. Because there's stigma around HIV. Like, that person probably uses drugs. That person's probably a slut. That person's this and that. And I'm like, that is not. If that were my truth, I probably wouldn't be as hurt by the things that people say. But it's not. It's not my truth. But also, what people say is not necessarily truth, because it's not a fact. It's a perspective.
It still hurts when you hear it through the grapevine, things that people are saying about you.
Of course. But also, Brendan, you know what? Everyone talks about everyone, and the reality is we assume people are more concerned with us and our lives than they really are. They may talk about it for a while, and then they move on. And then it's like, it's old news. It's like yesterday's news. It's like, who cares? You know what I mean? They'll talk about it for a while, and then everyone is concerned about their own lives. Everyone's a narcissist, right? Like, they're not worried about other people. I mean, not genuinely everyone's a narcissist, but, we live in the United States of America. People are very self-focused. So they're not that focused on you. That's a perception from your behalf. Like, oh, they're so focused on me. You're paranoia. That is, and even if they are saying things about your HIV status or whatever, like, that's a reflection of them.
Right.
Because people that talk poorly about other people, they don't feel good about themselves. Because people who do feel good about themselves don't go around trying to make others feel badly about themselves. Just think about it rationally, logically. That's like, you have to just feel sorry for someone like that. Too bad for them, but that's the kind of negativity and the kind of self-hatred they walk around the world with. Because if you feel good and you love yourself, you don't go around talking badly about other people.
Right.
Shaming them or making them feel bad about their status or about anything.
But
about their mental health issues, about their drug abuse issues, about whatever.
But it got so bad in Texas that I couldn't even date anybody. I couldn't. It was bad.
I believe you, and I know that was very painful. I can feel your pain and how you talk about it. What I want you to understand is, part of this is we're not invalidating your pain and how it affects you then and now. But you're a different man now. And what happened then is not happening now. It's gone. It's over. Okay? And those people genuinely do not matter in your life at this stage of your life. So the reality is, part of what our healing is mindfulness practice, right? How do we come back to the here and now? Because if we live in the past, we live in the future, we're living in a non-reality. It does not exist anymore. And when we call back memories from the past, that is gone, that is no longer, and we experience them in the here and now, what we do sometimes is, and this is human, right? It's like when you go and watch a movie and you get pulled into the plot and the character development and you really feel what's happening in the movie and you have emotion about it, right? You cry, you feel sadness, you feel their pain. But is it really happening? No, it's a movie. It's not really happening. And that is similar to how when we call back old memories and old traumas, we can experience pain as though it's happening now. But no, it's not happening now. It's gone. It's over. It's done.
Right.
So part of it is, the ideal is how do we live and move and breathe in this moment right now, in the here and now, always. Because if we're living in the future, we're living in the past, again, it doesn't exist. It's over.
Right.
It's either over or it hasn't happened yet.
And I'm getting much better at that too. I used to be very, very focused on the future. And then, and I'm only just realizing in this past year how much pain that I was carrying around from the past. I didn't even realize it. But now, I try not to think about what's going to happen tomorrow. I try to focus on what I have control over today. And that is, it's really, it takes a lot of my anxiety away. And so, that's a big step that I've taken too.
That's wonderful, Brandon. That's so good. That's an act of self-love.
But I do need, I just really want to talk about, like, the past. And I want to talk about it. Like,
Well,
one more thing I have to talk to you about.
Let's talk about whatever you need to talk about. Let's talk about it.
Well, right now, I just thought of something. I cut my mom off.
Okay.
I turned off her cell phone because she texted me and was like, first of all, it was to text me about the phone bill being due. And she also decided to talk to me about the things that I wrote on social media about my family. And she's like, none of that is true. And I was like, all of that's true, and it's my truth. And I said, and if I wasn't sure that was true, I'm pretty sure there's a disclaimer in there saying, I'm not 100% sure about this, but this is what I think. It's no less hurtful, I realize, and it's probably not the best way to have gone about writing what I needed to write, but it's out there, and you know that I feel this, and I know that it's not in the family's DNA or whatever to talk about all this nonsense, but I am healing myself. And then she said, just don't pay my phone bill, turn off the phone, I don't need it anymore, it's time. And I said, stop being so childish. And she was like, I'm not. I'm a grown woman. I need to learn to do things for myself. But I still know women, and I still know that my mom was being passive aggressive. But I just did it. I did it. I was like, fine, fuck it, and turned it off. Saves me $95 a month. So.
Well, but I mean, like, maybe that is her learning to take responsibility for herself. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you don't owe her phone bill every month.
No, I know. And but it does make me resentful when I'm paying her phone bill that she doesn't use it to check up on me or do mother things.
Well, but that's all the more reason you shouldn't pay it.
Exactly. And that's why
If you're gonna give someone money, I don't care who it is, you have to give it without expectation of something in return.
Exactly. I
Don't
do
give it. You know what I mean? Don't give it, because then you're just creating a bad dynamic between you and her. Not that creates the dynamic. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But you know what I mean? It just will add more tension to your guys' way of communicating and interacting. Because again, you just said it. Then you're projecting some kind of expectation that she may not be able to meet, and it doesn't have anything to do with you. That's about where she's at in her life.
Yeah.
Or how she manages her relationships with her children.
Yeah. But
I mean, do you perceive that she treats you differently than her other children?
I do, and I always have, and that's in my writing. And I spoke with my sister.
How so? How so?
I think we've talked about this, in the way that every time, because we moved around a lot when I was a child, every time we moved around, it was always a situation where like two of my brothers would team up and they'd be like, we're going to share the room. And then the brother that had to share the room with me was always clearly dejected and like sad about it. And then of course my sister had her own room until my second sister came along and they had to share a room. And when there was an opportunity to stick me somewhere that wasn't a room but could be made a room, that's where I got to go. I got to go in the basement without a door, without heat. I got to go live in the second den with no doors that was directly open to the kitchen, and that's where my anxiety about slamming cabinet doors comes from, is because of that exact situation. And so I always felt that I was carving, I had to literally find a corner to sleep in, like every time we moved. Meanwhile, my brothers and sisters were well taken care of. You know, and my mother kicked me out of the house on 2 different occasions. The first one was because I refused, and this was, you know, my mother didn't, she should have realized that the age of 15 is a hard time for everybody. You know, and I was still figuring out how to live in this world that didn't want me in it. And I didn't want to go be a part of a church that didn't want me in it. And I was being made to go sit in confirmation classes and be confirmed in the Lutheran Church, but I had no interest in being there. And it was very clear to the pastor who was teaching the class, and he asked me one day, do you want to go home? Do you even want to be here? And I was like, not really. And he sent me out. My mom picked me up, and the next day she said, you're going to go live with your dad. And I said, okay. And for the next 2 years, I slept on a deflated air mattress. And then when I came back from New York, because I lived my 18th year, I lived with my best friend from high school and her mother. And then I moved to New York when I was 18, but then I moved back to Lubbock, and I kind of just worked and lived my life for a little while, and my whole thing was to get back to New York at some point. And so I did, and I came back, and then I started college at Hunter, and then I moved, and then I was having real psychological problems at that point. I was like having real slamming my head into like walls issues. And so I moved back. My mom was like, come home. She's like, I'll take care of you. You don't have to worry about anything, blah, blah, blah. That's the only reason that I moved back. 2 months later, she said, I can't do this. You can't live here anymore. And it wasn't even for anything really, I didn't do anything bad. She let me borrow her car, and I came back a little late with it. And it's not like I was drinking, it's not like I was doing drugs, or anything like that. So she kicked me out, but I had nowhere to go. And so that's what led to me trying to kill myself. So that's,
There's a lot of pain there with your relationship with your mom.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of unresolved pain.
She doesn't see it.
We can't force people to see what they don't want to see.
Yeah, I know.
So your job in healing your pain is really separate from your mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so that's why I say your writing is good. The reality is, though, and again, this is not a critique or criticism. If you put your writing on a social media platform where other people can see it, and you know she's going to feel somehow offended or like you're critiquing her as a person, as a mother, she's entitled to have a response or reaction to it. You can't control that, you know?
Of course, no. I was expecting this response. I was.
Even if it's like she's having a defensive response when you know it's true, even if you knew everything that you wrote there was true, the reality is some people aren't capable of looking at their faults and flaws. They don't want to look at themselves. They don't want to own it. They don't want to spouse as a friend, and so we can't force someone to want to do that work. But our healing comes from acknowledging our pain around a relationship or relationships, right? Our feeling of not feeling loved or lovable because of how a parent interacted with us or how they chose to be with us in relationship.
Yeah.
That's our work, is to heal those wounds. And part of that is Brennan, you should bring some of your writings to session, or you should even just write a letter to your mom, read it in session, and then we can help you process some, and you may have already done that in your writings, but to help you process through the feelings that come up around these experiences of not being seen by your mom, of not feeling loved, of not feeling held, of not feeling like she cared about you in the way that you needed her to. Because any human being has that, right? To a greater or lesser degree. Situations where their parents just sadly could not show up for them in the way that we needed them to. Right?
Yeah.
They just could not be present or be connected to us or attuned with us in a way, or they couldn't validate our worthiness or our lovability in the way that we needed them to. And these things stick with us until we heal that inner wounded child within us. We have to heal it. But that is our own work. That really is something separate from them. Because you have to think about it like, what if mom was no longer physically here in the world? Like, you could still heal that wound. And that is your work, right? Is healing that wound. And part of it is vis-a-vis confronting that pain, feeling those feelings, acknowledging that they're there, not trying to push them away, not trying to reject them, seeing that little boy in you who's wounded, picking him up, holding him, letting him know that you were here for him. You were going to take care of him. You were going to make him feel loved. You were going to protect him.
Yeah. But I think I'm working on it. So.
Did you say something?
I said I'm pretty sure I'm.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Something happened with your sound.
I can hear you. Hold on. Can you hear me?
Your sound went off. Did you hit something?
Hello?
Hello? Can't hear you. Go out and come back in.
Okay.
No, go out and come in again.
Let's see.
Hi, I can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. What did you say?
I was just saying that I'm working on doing the work to heal myself, and that's what I told her. I said, I'm doing this to heal myself. This isn't about her. Like, I do it so that I can get some perspective from whoever. I like to hear when people tell me that it's not unusual or it is very unusual. I like to get like a gauge of where kind of how my life falls in the scheme of things. Anyway, I like to write, so that's
good. It sounds like it's cathartic and healing for you. That's good, Brandon. That's a good outlet.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. Anyway.
Do we have your next appointment scheduled?
Yes, the next one, but we should probably schedule another one out.
Yeah, let's schedule some in the future. I'm going to be away for a little bit, but then I'll be back. I'm away for like a week and a